I am Abigail, 32 years old, and I thought after 3 years of marriage to Robert, his family would finally accept me. This vacation at their exclusive beach resort was supposed to be our chance to bond. Instead, during our first dinner, my mother-in-law Eleanor pointed to a small table in the corner. "You will sit there, dear." No one spoke to me the entire evening. When I confronted Robert later, he simply shrugged and said, "It is just their way." I smiled and replied, "Perfect. I have my own way too." If you are enjoying this story, please let me know where you are watching from in the comments below. Hit the like button and subscribe for more stories about standing up for yourself when others try to push you down. Robert and I met 4 years ago at a charity gala in Chicago. I was there representing my marketing firm, which had donated significant resources to the event. He was there with his family, whose name was on half the buildings in the financial district. Our eyes met across the room in that cliché way romance novels describe, but it really did happen that way. He approached me, introduced himself without any pretense about his family wealth, and we spent the entire evening talking in a quiet corner, ignoring the glittering event around us. Our romance was whirlwind and intense. Within 6 months we were engaged, and 3 months after that, we were married in a ceremony that was a compromise between my desire for simplicity and his family's expectations for grandeur. I should have recognized the warning signs when his parents insisted on controlling the guest list and nearly excluded my college friends for being unsuitable. Robert managed to navigate that particular battle, and I thought we had reached an understanding with his family. My own background could not have been more different from his. I grew up in a small town in Wisconsin, the daughter of a high school teacher and a nurse. We were comfortable but never wealthy. What we lacked in financial resources we made up for in love and support. My parents worked hard to put me through college, and I repaid their faith by graduating at the top of my class and securing a job at one of the top marketing firms in Chicago. By 30, I had worked my way up to executive level, something I had achieved through determination and talent rather than family connections. The contrast with Robert's upbringing could not have been starker. The Harrington family had been in banking for 4 generations. They lived in a world of private schools, vacation homes, and unspoken rules about who belonged and who did not. Robert had rebelled in small ways, choosing to work in venture capital rather than joining the family bank, but he remained tethered to his family's expectations and traditions in ways that became more apparent after we married. Our interactions with his family during those first 3 years of marriage had been limited to formal dinners at their mansion on the Gold Coast and obligatory appearances at family events. These meetings were always brief and carefully choreographed. His mother would ask polite questions about my work without listening to the answers. His father would barely acknowledge my presence beyond the initial greeting. His older brother James would make thinly veiled comments about people who married into wealth. Each time Robert would assure me that they just needed time to warm up to me. When Robert suggested we join his family for their annual 2-week vacation at their private beach resort in the Carolinas, I was hesitant but hopeful. "This is our chance to really spend time together," he promised. "Once they get to know you better, they will see what I see in you." I threw myself into preparation for the trip with characteristic thoroughness. I researched their interests to find conversation topics, bought thoughtful gifts for each family member, and even took tennis lessons since I knew morning matches were a family tradition. I wanted this vacation to be the turning point in my relationship with the Harringtons. The first warning signs appeared a week before our departure. Robert began receiving frequent calls from his mother, which he would take in another room. He became nervous and evasive when I asked about the vacation itinerary. When I overheard him saying, "Mom, we have discussed this. I am not changing my mind," I confronted him, but he dismissed my concerns. "Just family business," he said with a tight smile that did not reach his eyes. Our journey to the resort was tense. Robert was quiet during the flight, staring out the window and responding to my attempts at conversation with distracted monosyllables. When we arrived at the small private airport near the resort, a fleet of luxury SUVs was waiting to transport the family. I noticed immediately that Robert and I were directed to a separate vehicle from his parents and siblings. The resort itself was breathtaking, a collection of elegant villas set among palm trees with the Atlantic Ocean as a backdrop. In any other circumstances, I would have been overwhelmed by the beauty and privilege of such a place. Instead, as we approached the main villa where the family would be gathering for dinner, I felt a growing sense of dread that all my preparations would be for nothing. The greeting from the Harrington family at the main villa was like a scene from a period drama about aristocratic disdain. George Harrington, my father-in-law, a tall man with silver hair, and the confident posture of someone who has never been denied anything, merely nodded in my direction before turning his full attention to his son. "Robert, good to see you made it. There are some business matters we need to discuss before dinner." Eleanor, my mother-in-law, offered her cheek for the obligatory air kiss but managed to avoid actual physical contact. "Abigail, you look rested," she said, her gaze critically, assessing my carefully chosen resort wear, which suddenly felt inadequate despite its designer label. The siblings were no better. James, the older brother who had taken his position at the family bank with the gravity of a crown prince, assuming the throne, barely acknowledged me. His wife Victoria, a woman from a similarly prestigious family, gave me a smile that held all the warmth of a January morning in Chicago. Robert's younger sister Catherine, who I had hoped might be an ally, seemed determined to avoid eye contact entirely. Only Robert's teenage niece, Lily James's daughter, offered a genuine "Hello, Aunt Abigail," before being silenced by a sharp look from her grandmother. The real shock came at dinner time. The family gathered in the dining room of the main villa where the table was set with fine china and crystal that probably cost more than my annual salary. As everyone began to take their seats, Eleanor touched my arm. "Abigail, we have arranged for you to sit at that table," she said, pointing to a small table set up in the corner of the room, separated from the main table where the rest of the family was assembling. "The family has some matters to discuss, and we would not want to bore you." I looked at Robert, expecting him to object, to insist that his wife should sit with the family. Instead, he avoided my eyes and took his seat between his father and brother. The message was clear in this setting: he was a Harrington first and my husband second. Pride kept me from making a scene. I sat at my isolated table while the server brought my courses in awkward silence. From my position, I could hear fragments of conversation about family investments, upcoming social events, and reminiscences about past vacations, all topics from which I was deliberately excluded. Several times during that interminable meal, I tried to engage. When I overheard a discussion about a marketing campaign for a new financial product the bank was launching, I offered a professional observation. The conversation paused, several pairs of eyes turned to me with surprise, as if they had forgotten I was there, and then resumed without acknowledgement of my comment. After dinner, the family moved to the terrace for drinks. No one explicitly told me I could not join them, but no one invited me either. I stood awkwardly on the periphery until Robert finally approached me with an apologetic smile. "They always use this time to catch up," he explained, as if that justified my exclusion. "Robert, this is not normal," I said, keeping my voice low. "Your family is deliberately shutting me out. Why are you letting this happen?" He ran a hand through his hair, a gesture I recognized as a sign of his discomfort. "Look, my family has always been private about certain things. Give them time." "Time? It has been 3 years since we got married. How much more time do they need?" He glanced back at his family, who were watching our conversation with undisguised interest. "Let us not do this now, please, Abigail." I returned to our villa alone that night. When Robert finally joined me, I was sitting on the balcony, staring at the moonlight reflecting off the ocean. He sat across from me, looking exhausted. "I found out the schedule for tomorrow," he said, attempting a normal conversation. "The men are playing golf in the morning, and then there is a boat trip in the afternoon." "Am I invited to any of these activities?" I asked. His hesitation told me everything. "The boat might be a bit crowded. Mom suggested you might enjoy the spa instead." So the pattern continues. Your family has planned this entire vacation to exclude me. That is not fair. They just have their traditions. Traditions that conveniently keep me at a distance. "I overheard your mother talking to Victoria. She referred to me as your current situation." Robert winced but did not deny it. "Mom can be old-fashioned." "This is not about being old-fashioned. This is about respect. They are treating me like an unwelcome intruder, and you are letting them." He sighed heavily. Look, it is just their way of doing things. They will come around eventually. Those words, "it is just their way," would become a recurring theme over the next few days, a phrase that encapsulated all the subtle and not-so-subtle exclusions I would experience. The pattern established on that first evening continued with depressing consistency over the next few days. Each morning I would wake up hoping for some improvement, only to discover new ways the family had devised to exclude me. On the second day, the family gathered for what was apparently an annual tradition, the family photo on the beach. I dressed carefully and joined them at the designated spot where a professional photographer was setting up. Before I could take my place beside Robert, Eleanor intervened. "Abigail, would you mind terribly stepping aside for the family photos? We will do some casual ones with everyone afterward." The afterward never came. Once the formal family groupings were complete, everyone dispersed to their various activities, leaving me standing alone with the photographer, who gave me a sympathetic look. The boat excursion that afternoon turned into another humiliation. Despite Robert's warning about limited space, I decided to join anyway, only to discover there were two boats. Robert was directed to one with his parents, brother and Victoria, while I was guided to the second boat with Catherine, her husband, and the teenage children. It might have been an opportunity to bond with the younger generation, except Catherine made it clear with her frigid demeanor that conversation was not welcome. Meals continued with the same separate seating arrangement. After my third dinner alone at the side table, I stopped attending altogether, opting, instead, to order room service to our villa. Robert expressed concern, but did not press the issue, joining his family for dinner and returning to find me already in bed, pretending to be asleep. As the days passed, Robert was increasingly absorbed into the family orbit, attending business meetings with his father and brother, playing tennis with his sister, and generally reverting to the role he had played before we met. When we were together, he was distracted and defensive, quick to justify his family's behavior and dismiss my feelings. I made several attempts to connect with individual family members, hoping to find a crack in the united front they presented. I offered to help Catherine with planning her daughter's upcoming Sweet 16 celebration, drawing on my event marketing experience. She declined with a thin smile and a comment about having professionals handle it. I approached George with a question about a financial news article I had deliberately read that morning, thinking he might appreciate my interest in his field. He answered curtly and turned away, making it clear the conversation was over before it began. Even Victoria, who might have empathized with the position of an in-law in this tight-knit family, rebuffed my friendly overtures with polite indifference. The only person who showed me any kindness was Lily, Robert's 16-year-old niece. On the fourth day of the vacation, she found me sitting alone by one of the smaller pools away from where the family usually gathered. "They did the same thing to my mom when she first married Dad," Lily said, sitting beside me without invitation. "Grandma had her eating at the kiddie table for like 2 years. "What changed?" I asked, surprised by this information. Lily shrugged. "Mom comes from money too, so eventually they decided she was acceptable. Plus she had me, and Grandma is big on continuing the family line." Before I could ask more, James called for his daughter, his voice sharp with disapproval when he saw who she was talking to. Lily rolled her eyes but obeyed, leaving me with the uncomfortable realization that producing a Harrington heir might be the only path to acceptance in this family. That evening I called my best friend Madison back in Chicago, seeking perspective from someone who knew me before I became Mrs. Robert Harrington. "They are making me feel like I am losing my mind, Mads," I told her. "Like I am being unreasonable for expecting to be treated with basic courtesy." "You are not crazy," Madison assured me. "They are trying to break you down, see if you will walk away. Rich families like that, they think everyone is after their money. You need to show them you are not going anywhere, but you also will not be disrespected." Her words gave me strength, but my resolve was tested again the next morning, when I overheard a conversation between Eleanor and Victoria as they passed by the garden nook where I was reading. "Robert has always been impulsive," Eleanor was saying. "Remember that dreadful sports car he bought after college? This marriage is the same sort of thing. Once the novelty wears off, he will come to his senses and find someone suitable." "How long do you think this one will last?" Victoria asked with casual cruelty. "Not long," Eleanor replied confidently. These career women are not built for family life. When she realizes he expects children and a proper home, she will move on. They always do. Their voices faded as they walked away, unaware that I had heard every word. The pain of those dismissive comments cut deep, but something else was emerging from the hurt, a slow burning anger and determination that this family would not define my worth or my marriage. That night I waited for Robert in our villa, a glass of wine in hand, and my patience exhausted. When he returned from another evening with his family looking relaxed in a way he never did when, with me these days, something snapped inside me. "We need to talk," I said, my voice steady despite the emotion churning inside. "Actually, you need to talk. I need you to explain exactly why your family treats me like I am invisible and why you allow it." Robert sighed, the content expression sliding off his face. "Abby, please. It has been a long day. Every day here has been long for me, Robert. Every day of sitting alone, being excluded, watching my husband choose his family's comfort over his wife's dignity. So yes, we are having this conversation now." Perhaps recognizing the determination in my tone, he sat down across from me. "What do you want me to say? My family has certain ways, certain traditions." "Stop with the traditions excuse. This is not about traditions. This is about them not accepting me, and I want to know why." He was quiet for a long moment, staring at his hands. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. "They are concerned about your background." "My background? You mean the fact that I was not born with a silver spoon in my mouth, that I had to work for everything I have achieved?" "It is more complicated than that. The Harrington family has certain expectations about who we marry. It is about compatibility of values, of understanding the responsibilities that come with the family name." "I have never asked for your family's money, Robert. I have my own career, my own income." "That is part of the problem," he admitted. "They believe a Harrington wife should be focused on family, on social responsibilities, on supporting her husband's position in society. Your career makes them uncomfortable. They see it as a sign that you are not committed to the marriage." I stared at him, incredulous. "So, if I quit my job and became a socialite who lunches, they would accept me?" He hesitated. "It would help. But there is more to it. They are not convinced this marriage will last." The words hit me like a physical blow. "What does that mean?" Robert ran a hand through his hair, looking miserable. "My parents, especially my mother, believe that people from different backgrounds rarely make successful marriages. They think eventually our differences will drive us apart. So all this, the separate table, the exclusion from activities, it is all because they are waiting for us to divorce." He did not deny it. "They are protecting the family interests. If we do separate, they do not want you to have formed close relationships with family members or to have been privy to private family matters." The calculated cruelty of it took my breath away. "And you? Do you also think our marriage is temporary?" "Of course not," he said quickly, but there was a flicker of uncertainty in his eyes that told me he had considered the possibility. "I love you, Abigail, but my family is important to me too. Important enough that you will let them treat your wife like she is nothing." "What do you want me to do? Cut ties with my entire family? They are who they are. This is just their way of handling things they are uncomfortable with. Their way is cruel and disrespectful. And by allowing it, you are being cruel and disrespectful too." He stood up, frustration evident in his stance. "Look, we have 10 more days here. Can you just endure it? For me, once we are back home, things will go back to normal." "Normal? You mean where I see your family at carefully controlled events a few times a year, and they continue to treat me like an unwelcome intruder? That is not normal, Robert. That is not a marriage." "What do you want from me?" he asked, throwing his hands up in exasperation. "I want you to stand up for me. I want you to tell your family that I am your wife and they will treat me with respect or they will not see either of us." He stared at me as if I had suggested he commit a crime. "You cannot ask me to choose between you and my family." "I am not asking you to choose. I am asking you to make room for both. But if they force a choice, yes, I expect my husband to choose his wife." Robert was silent for a long moment, Then he shrugged that same dismissive gesture that had infuriated me since the first night. It is just their way, Abigail. I cannot change them. In that moment, something shifted inside me. The hurt was still there, but now it was overshadowed by clarity and determination. I smiled a smile that contained no warmth or submission. Perfect. I have my own way too. He looked confused by my sudden change in demeanor. What does that mean? It means I am done playing by their rules. Starting tomorrow, we do things my way. Robert looked concerned but also skeptical. Abigail, do not do anything to make this situation worse. Worse than being treated like I do not exist. Worse than having a husband who will not stand up for me. Do not worry, Robert. I will not embarrass you, but I will not be invisible anymore either. He tried to continue the conversation, but I was done talking. I went to bed but did not sleep. Instead, I spent the night planning, thinking about what Madison had said about showing them I would not be broken or disrespected. By morning, I had a clear strategy and a newfound sense of calm. While Robert slept, I made several phone calls and sent a series of emails to my assistant in Chicago. Plan B is a go. I texted her, smiling at her immediate response. About time. Give them hell. When Robert woke, he found me dressed in one of my power suits that I usually reserved for important client meetings, my hair and makeup impeccable, typing on my laptop. What are you doing? He asked, eyeing my outfit with confusion. Getting ready for breakfast, I replied cheerfully. I have an announcement to make to the family. The Harrington family was already assembled in the dining room when Robert and I arrived. All conversation stopped, as they took in my business attire, so out of place in the casual resort setting. I smiled brightly, ignoring the separate table that had been set for me as usual. Good morning, everyone. I said, my voice carrying the confident tone I used in boardroom presentations. I have an announcement to make. I have chartered a yacht for today for all of us. It will be here in 1 hour. Eleanor recovered first from the surprise. That is very presumptuous of you, Abigail. The family already has plans for today. Yes, I know. Golf for the men, shopping for the women, and another dinner where I sit alone at a separate table. I am offering an alternative, a day on the water, with excellent food, drinks, and a chance for us to actually get to know each other. After all, we are family, are we not? My direct challenge to their exclusionary tactics left them momentarily speechless. George frowned, clearly not accustomed to having his authority challenged. We appreciate the gesture, he said stiffly, but as Eleanor mentioned, we have plans. I turned to Robert, raising an eyebrow in silent challenge. For the first time since we had arrived, he stepped up beside me. Actually, the yacht sounds great, he said, his voice stronger than I had heard it in days. I think we should all go. It was thoughtful of Abigail to arrange it. The family exchanged glances, clearly weighing their options. To refuse now would be an obvious and public rejection. Finally, Eleanor nodded tightly. Very well. We will adjust our plans. An hour later, we boarded the luxury yacht I had chartered. It was every bit as impressive as the Harrington family boat, perhaps more so with its sleek, modern design and professional crew. I had arranged for a gourmet lunch, premium champagne, and even a photographer to document the day, an expense that made a significant dent in my savings but was worth every penny for the looks on their faces. As we set out to sea, I moved strategically around the yacht, engaging different family members in conversation. With Catherine, I discussed her daughter's interests, revealing that I had taken the liberty of arranging for tickets to a sold-out concert by Lily's favorite artist as a gift. How did you manage that? Catherine asked, genuinely surprised. Those tickets have been impossible to find. One of my clients is the event sponsor, I said casually. It was a simple matter of making a call. With James, I steered the conversation toward his recent acquisition of a tech startup, a move that had been mentioned in the business press. Interesting choice, I commented, though I wonder if you have considered the brand alignment issues. My firm recently handled a similar integration, and we found that maintaining the startup's distinct identity within the parent company structure yielded better market response. James looked at me with new interest. You follow acquisition strategies. It is part of my job. Marketing is not just about advertisements, it is about positioning and integration too. By lunchtime, I had managed to speak individually with most family members, subtly demonstrating that I was neither intimidated by their wealth nor ignorant of their world. The carefully planned seating arrangement for lunch placed me between George and Eleanor, with Robert across the table. During the meal, I noticed George checking his phone repeatedly, a frown deepening on his face. Taking a calculated risk, I leaned over. "Trouble with the Westridge merger?" I asked quietly. His head snapped up, eyes narrowing. "How do you know about Westridge?" "I make it my business to know what affects my family," I replied calmly. "And I happen to notice that Westridge stock has been behaving unusually the past few weeks. Rumors of a hostile takeover attempt by Meridian Group." George studied me with new intensity. "You follow the markets?" "Among other things. I also know that Julian Chen, Meridian's CEO, is presenting at the Chicago Financial Forum next month. My firm is handling the event marketing." I let that information hang in the air, watching as George processed the implications. Before he could respond, I was saved by the arrival of Eleanor's sister Margaret, who had been vacationing nearby and had accepted my last-minute invitation to join us for lunch. "Maggie," Eleanor exclaimed, clearly surprised. "What are you doing here?" "Abigail invited me," Margaret replied, kissing her sister on the cheek. "Said it was time I met the newest member of the family properly. Could not agree more." Margaret's presence changed the dynamic immediately. Unlike her sister, she was warm and forthright, with a refreshing lack of pretension, despite her own considerable wealth and social standing. She made a point of sitting next to me and asking about my work, my background, and my life with Robert, all with genuine interest. "I always said this family needed some fresh blood," she declared loudly enough for everyone to hear. "Too much inbreeding leads to weak stock, as any good horse breeder will tell you." Several of the younger family members snickered while Eleanor looked mortified. I caught Robert watching me with a mix of surprise and something that looked like pride. As the day progressed, the rigid family hierarchy began to show cracks. Lily and her cousins, freed from the usual formal structure, engaged me in conversation about music and social media. James's wife Victoria, perhaps sensing a shift in the wind, made a point of asking my opinion about the resort's interior design. Even Catherine thawed slightly, thanking me again for the concert tickets. By the time we returned to the resort, the family dynamic had subtly shifted. No one suggested I sit at a separate table for dinner. Instead, we gathered on the terrace of the main villa, where I had arranged for a local chef to prepare a traditional low-country boil served family style. My final strategic move was the seating arrangement, which deliberately mixed family members who rarely interacted directly. Robert sat between his mother and niece while I positioned myself between George and Margaret, whose irreverent commentary continued to disrupt the usual formal Harrington interaction patterns. As the evening wound down, I could sense the family's uncertainty. Their usual patterns had been disrupted, their authority challenged, and worst of all, some of them had actually enjoyed themselves. They retired for the night unsettled, which was exactly what I had intended. When Robert and I returned to our villa, he was quiet, processing the day's events. Finally, he turned to me. "That was impressive. How did you pull all that together so quickly?" "I am good at my job, Robert. Events, people, messaging, these are things I understand. Your family has been controlling the narrative since we arrived. Today I changed the story." He sat beside me on the balcony, taking my hand. "I had no idea about the Westridge situation. How did you know my father is worried about it?" "I pay attention. And unlike your family, I do not underestimate people based on their background." He had the grace to look ashamed. "Abigail, about what I said last night." I squeezed his hand but stopped him from continuing. "We will talk about us later. Right now I need you to understand that tomorrow is going to be even more interesting. I suggest you get some sleep." The next morning, the Harrington family discovered just how serious I was about doing things my way. At breakfast served in the main villa's dining room, where I now took my place at the family table without invitation, I casually mentioned the day's schedule. "The first meeting is at 10 with Lawrence Davidson from Continental Trust," I announced, checking my phone. "George, I thought you and Robert might want to handle that one since it concerns the Asia-Pacific expansion." George's coffee cup froze halfway to his lips. What meeting? I have no appointment with Lawrence. You do now, I replied calmly. When I mentioned we were all here together, he was eager to come discuss the partnership opportunity, especially given the Westridge situation. The color drained from George's face. You had no right to arrange business meetings without consulting me. I assumed you would want to seize the opportunity. Lawrence rarely makes himself available on such short notice. And after him, Sofia Rodriguez from Vantage Capital will be stopping by to discuss alternative financing options for the Westridge defense. James leaned forward, his expression a mix of alarm and curiosity. How do you know Sofia Rodriguez? We served on a nonprofit board together last year. She mentioned Vantage has been looking for an entry point with Harrington Banking. I took a sip of coffee. Oh, and I hope no one minds, but I invited Julian Chen for dinner tomorrow night. That name sent a visible shockwave through the family. George stood abruptly, his napkin falling to the floor. Robert, I need to speak with you and your wife, privately. Now. We followed him to his office in the villa, where he closed the door and turned to face us, his expression thunderous. What exactly do you think you are doing, young lady? I met his gaze steadily. I am doing what any dedicated family member would do, George. I am leveraging my professional connections to help with a business challenge that seems to be causing you significant concern. These are private family matters. You had no business interfering. I am family, I replied, my voice hardening. Or at least I thought I was when I married your son. But your actions this week have made it clear you do not see me that way. Robert stepped forward. Dad, what is going on with Westridge? Why did you not tell me there were problems? George ran a hand over his face, suddenly looking older. It is complicated. Meridian has been quietly acquiring shares. We are vulnerable to a hostile takeover unless we can secure additional backing quickly. And you kept this from me. I am on the board, for God's sake. We did not want to worry you during your vacation. That is a convenient excuse, I interrupted. Just like the separate table was to avoid boring me with family talk. The truth is, you do not trust Robert to be fully involved in family business because he married me, and you certainly do not trust me with any information about the family. Before George could respond, the door opened and Eleanor entered, followed by James and Catherine. What is happening here? Eleanor demanded. George, why is this woman arranging meetings with our business associates? This woman, Robert said, his voice unusually firm, is my wife, and apparently she has connections that might save the bank from a hostile takeover. Connections that would have been helpful weeks ago if anyone had bothered to include her or even me in these discussions. Eleanor looked taken aback by her son's tone. Her gaze shifted to me, reassessing. Is that true? You know these people personally? Yes, Eleanor, I do. In my position, I work with executives across multiple industries. My job is about relationships and communication skills that seem to be lacking in this family. For the first time since I had met her, Eleanor seemed at a loss for words. James filled the silence. How bad is the Westridge situation, Dad? George sighed heavily. Bad. Meridian has nearly 27% of shares. If they reach 30, they can force significant changes. We need new investment partners quickly, but most of our usual allies are already committed elsewhere. Which is why connections with people like Lawrence Davidson and Sofia Rodriguez could be crucial, I pointed out. And why alienating the wife of one of your board members simply because she comes from a different background might not be the wisest business strategy. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. Finally, Catherine spoke up. You arranged all this overnight, these meetings with high-level executives. Yes. When people respect you professionally, they respond when you call. The barb hit its mark as several family members winced. Eleanor sank into a chair, her perfect posture momentarily abandoned. Why would you help us after how we have treated you? Because despite everything, I love Robert. And for better or worse, you are his family, which makes you my family too. Even if you have done everything possible to make me feel otherwise. Robert moved to stand beside me, taking my hand. Mom, Dad, all of you, this has to stop. The separate tables, the exclusion, the silent treatment. Abigail is my wife. If you cannot respect that, then we have a serious problem. It was the first time he had stood up to his family so directly, and I felt a surge of hope that perhaps our marriage could be salvaged after all. Eleanor looked at her husband, some unspoken communication passing between them. We were concerned, she admitted finally. About the family reputation, about Robert's position, about compatibility. You were concerned I would take advantage of your family wealth, I corrected her. Or that I would somehow diminish your social standing. Or perhaps that I would lure Robert away from his family obligations. Let me be clear, I have never wanted your money. I have my own career, my own achievements. What I wanted was to be part of this family, to be treated with basic respect. We may have misjudged the situation, George acknowledged reluctantly. You think Robert's voice was heavy with sarcasm. You have spent this entire vacation treating my wife like she is invisible, and now you discover she might be the key to saving the family business. If that does not prove how wrong you have been, I do not know what will. Eleanor dabbed at her eyes with a tissue. We thought we were protecting the family. The Harrington name means something in our circles. And that justifies cruelty, I asked quietly. Deliberately isolating me, making me eat alone, excluding me from family activities. How would any of you feel if you were treated that way by your spouse's family? The question hung in the air unanswered because the answer was obvious. None of them would have tolerated such treatment. James cleared his throat. For what it is worth, I think we should take these meetings Abigail has arranged. If there is any chance they can help with the Westridge situation, we would be fools to refuse out of pride. It was a small concession, but a significant one coming from the most staunchly traditional of the siblings. Catherine nodded in agreement, and even Eleanor gave a reluctant nod. Fine, George said, his businessman's pragmatism reasserting itself. We will meet with Davidson and Rodriguez, and we will reconsider our approach to family dynamics. It was hardly a heartfelt apology, but I recognized it as the closest thing to an olive branch I was likely to get from this proud man. I have one condition, I said firmly. From now on, I am treated as family. No more separate tables, no more exclusion from activities, no more whispering about me being Robert's current situation. Either I am a Harrington by marriage with all the respect that entails, or Robert and I leave today, and you can handle your business crisis without my connections. Robert squeezed my hand in support. She is right, Dad. This is non-negotiable. George and Eleanor exchanged another long look before George nodded. Agreed. Now, when exactly is Lawrence arriving? The rest of the day unfolded in a whirlwind of business meetings, family discussions, and slowly thawing relationships. Lawrence Davidson was indeed impressed by the potential of the Asia-Pacific expansion and hinted at Continental Trust's interest in a significant investment. Sophia Rodriguez was more direct, outlining specific terms under which Vantage Capital would consider a partnership to fend off Meridian's takeover attempt. By evening, the mood in the villa had transformed. The business discussions had given way to a family dinner where, for the first time, I was truly included in the conversation. Robert sat beside me, his hand occasionally finding mine under the table, his expression a mix of admiration and apology. The real breakthrough came when Eleanor approached me as the dinner was winding down. Abigail, might we speak privately for a moment? We stepped out onto the terrace, the sound of waves in the distance. Eleanor seemed to struggle for words, a woman unaccustomed to admitting error. I owe you an apology, she said finally. Our treatment of you has been indefensible. Yes, it has been, I agreed, not making it easier for her. You must understand the Harrington family has always been selective about who joins our circle. It is not just about money or background, but about understanding our way of life, our responsibilities. I understand more than you give me credit for, Eleanor. What I do not understand is cruelty disguised as tradition. She flinched at that but did not argue. When Robert married you, we feared he was making an impulsive decision, that eventually the differences in your backgrounds would create problems, we thought. We thought it would be easier if we maintained some distance. You thought I would not last, so why bother getting to know me? Yes, she admitted. And clearly, we were wrong. The way you handled today, arranging those meetings, understanding the business situation, it showed a level of commitment to this family that I did not expect. I committed to this family the day I married Robert. You are the ones who refused to commit to me." Eleanor nodded slowly. "Perhaps we can start again. Not forget what has happened, but move forward differently." It was not the groveling apology part of me wanted, but I recognized the effort it took this proud woman to extend even this much of an olive branch. I would like that, Eleanor. For Robert's sake, and for the family's blank. The final days of the vacation unfolded with a new dynamic. While things were not suddenly perfect, there was a palpable shift in how the family interacted with me. I was included in activities, seated at the main table for meals, and even consulted on matters related to the business negotiations that continued throughout the week. The dinner with Julian Chen proved to be a masterstroke. Far from the hostile takeover artist the Harringtons feared, he was interested in a strategic partnership that would benefit both companies. My prior relationship with him through professional events had given me insights into his approach that the Harringtons had lacked. "You have quite a wife," Robert Julian commented during dinner. When she called to suggest this meeting, I was intrigued. Harrington banking has always been so traditional in its approach. It is refreshing to see new perspectives. The look of pride on Robert's face was worth every moment of discomfort I had endured during the first part of the vacation. The day before we were scheduled to leave, Eleanor asked me to join her for tea on the villa's terrace. It was the first time she had sought me out directly, and I approached the meeting with cautious optimism. "I have been thinking about our conversation," she said, as she poured tea into delicate china cups, "about starting again." And I prompted when she paused. "And I realized that I never properly welcomed you to the family. Not at the wedding, not afterward. I was so focused on what I thought Robert needed, that I failed to see what he had found in you." Coming from Eleanor, this was extraordinary. Thank you for saying that. I will not pretend it will be easy to change habits of a lifetime, but I would like to try. Perhaps when we return to Chicago, you and Robert could join us for Sunday dinner. A regular tradition, not just occasional formal events. It was a small gesture, but significant in what it represented: inclusion in the family's real life, not just the carefully choreographed public appearances. "I would like that," I said sincerely. "And perhaps you and George might come to our home sometimes as well. See how we live when we are not trying to impress anyone." She smiled tentatively. "I would like that too." That evening, Robert and I walked along the beach, the first truly peaceful moment we had shared during the entire vacation. As the sun set over the water, he stopped and turned to me. "I owe you an apology," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "I failed you, Abigail. I let my family treat you terribly, and I made excuses for them instead of standing up for you." "Yes, you did," I agreed, not softening the truth. "I was caught between two worlds, trying to please everyone and ending up pleasing no one. Worst of all, I hurt the person I love most." He took both my hands in his. "Can you forgive me?" I looked at him thoughtfully. "Forgiveness is not the issue, Robert. Trust is. I need to know that you see us as a team, that your loyalty is to our marriage first. I cannot go through this again." "You will not have to. These past few days have shown me what I should have known all along. You are the strongest, smartest person I know, and I am lucky you have not given up on me." It was a close thing, I admitted. There were moments during this vacation when I wondered if our marriage could survive. And now? I smiled, squeezing his hands. "Now I think we have a chance. A real one. But things need to change when we go home. No more separate lives where you have your family world and I have mine. We build something together, or not at all." "That is exactly what I want too," he promised. "No more excuses, no more, that is just their way. Our way from now on." The final dinner of the vacation was held in the main villa with the entire family present. For the first time, I sat beside Robert at the center of the table, not as a grudgingly tolerated outsider, but as an acknowledged member of the family. George even raised a toast to new partnerships and new perspectives, a public acknowledgement of my contribution to the family business crisis. We returned home to Chicago with a renewed sense of purpose in our marriage. Robert became more involved in my world, attending events with my friends and showing genuine interest in my career. I, in turn, began to participate more fully in family business discussions, offering marketing perspectives that proved valuable as the bank navigated the complex negotiations with Meridian and other potential partners. 6 months after that pivotal vacation, the results of our new approach were evident. The business partnership I had helped facilitate had successfully prevented the hostile takeover and actually strengthened Harrington Banking's market position. Robert and I had established clear boundaries with his family, while also building more authentic relationships with them. The real test came at Thanksgiving when we hosted both families at our home. My parents, with their unpretentious warmth and genuine interest in people, charmed even Eleanor, who made a visible effort to engage with them as equals. George and my father discovered a shared interest in military history and spent hours in animated conversation. The siblings and their spouses relaxed in the informal atmosphere, showing sides of themselves I had never seen during formal family gatherings. As I watched our families mingling, I reflected on the journey that had brought us to this point. The pain of exclusion had been real, but it had also forced both Robert and me to clarify what we truly wanted from our marriage and what we were willing to fight for. I had learned that standing up for yourself does not mean burning all bridges. Sometimes it means building new ones, stronger ones, based on mutual respect, rather than capitulation. Robert had learned that true loyalty to family sometimes means challenging their behavior when it is harmful or exclusionary. Most importantly, we had learned that a marriage must be a partnership of equals, not a battlefield where one person's family or career or preferences always take precedence. We were still learning, still making mistakes, but we were doing it together, defining our own way forward. As the evening wound down and our guests prepared to leave, Eleanor pulled me aside. "You have created something special here," she said, gesturing to the warm scene around us. "Something I did not think was possible." "A blending of different worlds," I suggested. "Yes, and something else too. A reminder that family is not just about who you were born to, but who you choose to include in your heart." She smiled a genuine smile without the usual reservation. "Thank you for not giving up on us, even when we gave you every reason to." In that moment, I felt the last of my resentment dissolve, not forgotten but transformed into understanding. The path forward would not always be smooth, but it would be authentic, and that was worth more than any easy acceptance based on conformity or silence. That night, as Robert and I cleaned up the last of the Thanksgiving dishes, I thought about how far we had come from that separate table at the beach resort. The journey had been painful at times, but necessary for both of us to grow into the partners we needed to be for each other. "What are you thinking about?" Robert asked, noticing my contemplative mood. "About how sometimes you have to be willing to disturb the peace to find true harmony," I replied. "And about how the hardest paths often lead to the most beautiful destinations." He wrapped his arms around me, and I leaned into his embrace, grateful for the strength we had found together. In the end, it was not about whose way was right, his family's or mine, but about finding our own way forward, one that honored both our pasts, while creating something new and strong for our future. If you found something meaningful in my story today, I would love to hear your thoughts in the comments. Have you ever had to stand up for yourself in a family situation? How did you handle it? Please hit the like button if this resonated with you. Subscribe to hear more stories about navigating complex relationships, and share this with someone who might need encouragement to find their own voice. Thank you for listening to my journey. And remember, sometimes the greatest act of love is refusing to accept disrespect, both for yourself and for those you care about.